The house on Willow Lane first met Ruth Mary Ellis in the autumn of 1959 when she stepped across its threshold as a 24-year-old bride with cinnamon on her fingers and hope in her heart, carried over the sill by Henry Ellis, a widower whose two children, 14-year-old Thomas, tall and silent with his father's square jaw, and 12-year-old Clara, clutching a rag doll and staring at the newcomer as though she were an intruder, waited in the hallway like small, wounded animals deciding whether to bite or flee. Henry's first wife had died 4 years earlier on an icy curve of Route 6, and the house still smelled of her lilac water and the unsaid accusation that no one would ever truly replace her. So Ruth, orphan raised by strict Pittsburgh aunts, determined to earn her place by keeping every window cracked open, even in winter so grief could leak out like steam. And she baked apple pies, sewed school dresses, helped with algebra, and slowly, painfully slowly, coaxed the children into calling her Ruth instead of ma'am, though Mom remained locked behind their teeth like a secret they would take to their graves. -1 years later, in the spring of 1966, Henry collapsed dead between towering stacks of fresh-cut pine, his heart bursting as suddenly as a dropped glass, leaving Ruth widowed at 31, sole guardian of 2 teenagers who looked at her with renewed suspicion, as if she had somehow stolen their remaining parent. And the house grew heavier, the cinnamon scent cloying, the nights louder with creaking beams that sounded like a man pacing the attic in boots that had never quite been sanded away. Ruth kept the windows open wider, let the wind howl through canned tomatoes until her fingers bled, and stitched the family together with thread that frayed but never quite broke. Then, in the rainy October of 1973, a greyhound coughed to a stop outside the Milford Depot, and out stepped Marlene Carver, 19, black-haired, green-eyed, lips painted arterial red, carrying one battered suitcase and a lifetime of rage at the world for making her mother die slow and poor in an Arizona charity ward. She was Henry's niece, the orphan daughter of his dead sister Evelyn, and the last line of Evelyn's spidery letter, "Take her if you can. She has nowhere else," felt less like a request than a curse. Marlene took the attic room without asking, hung a poster of Jim Morrison, burned incense that smelled of burning cathedrals, and within a week had every boy in 3 counties circling the porch like dogs scenting blood. Thomas, now 28 and already running Ellis and Son Carpentry with hands that could coax beauty from the ugliest oak, took one look at her and felt ice settle behind his ribs, while Clara, 26 and halfway through nursing school, tried to love her because that was what Clara did, lending dresses, driving her to interviews, forgiving her the night she found Marlene in the back seat of her fiancé Eddie's Buick with lipstick smeared across both their faces like war paint. Thomas never forgave, and the house absorbed Marlene the way it absorbed everything, slowly, resentfully, permanently. The decades slid past like a dull blade. Thomas built cradles that rocked themselves, confessionals where priests wept into cedar that smelled like mercy, porches that withstood hurricanes. Clara became the gentlest night nurse in Milford General, holding the hands of the dying while her own heart quietly cracked. Ruth, graying but unbowed, kept the books, grew prize roses, canned enough tomatoes to feed half the county, and kept every window open so the air would not thicken into something lethal. Marlene drifted waitress, cosmetics clerk, receptionist who stole Demerol and sold it behind the bowling alley. Married Dale Carver in 1981, a traveling salesman with slick hair and slicker lies who left in 1984 with the television and every cent in the joint account. Came home pregnant, miscarried at 5 months in Clara's childhood bed while Ruth spooned broth between her cracked lips, and Marlene stared at the ceiling as though it had personally betrayed her. After that she stopped pretending to look for work, lived on the 3rd floor, came down for meals, watched the family with the detached curiosity of a cat watching fish in a tank, and waited for something to break. In the summer of 2000, Thomas, 39 and married, quietly wealthy, rewrote Henry's will without telling a soul. Ruth would have the house for her lifetime. Then everything would divide equally between him and Clara. And Marlene, his stepsister who had never been a sister, would receive $5,000 and a polite note, thanking her for family feeling. Marlene found the document while dusting Thomas's roll-top desk. Read it twice by the light of a gooseneck lamp, lips moving silently, folded it back exactly. And that night sat on the porch swing, drinking Ruth's blackberry cordial straight from the bottle, until the stars blurred. Whispers began soft at first, then louder. Marlene to the neighbors that Thomas had started drinking, to the grocer that Clara was jealous of his success, to anyone who would listen that the family was coming apart at the seams. On the frost-cold night of October 17, 2000, Thomas worked late on a cherrywood hope chest for Reverend Hollis's daughter, came home smelling of sawdust and linseed oil, hung his jacket, nodded curtly to Marlene, sitting at the kitchen table in a peach silk robe smoking a Virginia, slim though she knew he hated the smell in the house, told her the cellar light was out and he needed finer sandpaper, opened the door, and descended the 12 steep oak treads worn soft in the middle by a century of feet. Marlene followed a minute later, barefoot, robe belt knotted tight, waited at the top until Thomas bent to pick up the sandpaper on the 4th step from the bottom, then placed both hands flat between his shoulder blades and pushed with all the strength her thin frame possessed. Surprised did the rest. His arms windmilled, the flashlight flew. His temple struck the 3rd step from the bottom with a sound like a pumpkin dropped on concrete, cervical vertebrae snapping. Half a second later, Marlene descended slowly, knelt, checked the pulse that wasn't there, unhooked the hammer from his tool belt, pressed the handle into his stiffening right hand, let the arm fall so the hammer clattered down to steps and came to rest against the baseboard exactly as though he had been carrying it when he slipped. She stood for a full minute listening to the house breathe, heard nothing, climbed back up, closed the cellar door softly, poured 2 inches of bourbon into a coffee cup, drank it in one swallow, and dialed 911 with tears already sliding down her cheeks like she had rehearsed them in a mirror for years. The police came, the ambulance came, the coroner came. They carried Thomas out under a sheet while Ruth stood on the porch in her chenille robe rocking on her heels, Marlene clinging to her so hard her nails left crescents in the old woman's arm, whispering over and over that he must have slipped, the stairs were so steep, while Clara arrived at dawn still in her scrubs, and took one look at the chalk outline on the cellar floor and began to shake, so hard her teeth chattered. The coroner noted alcohol in Thomas's blood just 0.09, enough to call it a tragic misstep, and Milford closed the book on another sad accident. Marlene wept loudest at the funeral, collapsing against the casket as though her heart had been torn out, while Clara stood apart, face blank, hands clenched so tight the knuckles cracked, and Ruth felt something inside her turn to stone. Then, before the dirt had settled on the grave, Marlene began whispering again. Clara had always been jealous. Clara had argued with Thomas about money the night he died. Clara had been drinking. Clara had threatened him, and the lies slid into police reports like silk into water, aided by a neighbor who swore she heard shouting. By Clara's fingerprints on the hammer, of course they were there. She had borrowed it 2 days earlier to hang a picture in the nurse's lounge. By Marlene's tear-streaked face on the witness stand. On a gray November morning, Clara, still wearing the same blood-flecked scrubs from the night shift, was arrested on the porch while neighbors watched from behind lace curtains. Marlene clutching Ruth and murmuring that it was for the best, that Clara needed help they couldn't give her. The trial lasted 9 days, the jury deliberated 9 hours, and Clara vanished into Muncie State Prison for 25 years while Marlene sold Thomas's business for $380,000, redecorated the house in shades of cream and gold, joined the country club, and moved Ruth, now 80 and apparently failing, to the cramped apartment above the detached garage because the stairs were too much for her. Bringing a bowl of soup and a pill every night for your heart. Mom watching with cat green eyes until Ruth swallowed. Ruth swallowed the first few, then began tipping the rest into the scarlet geranium on her windowsill until the plant grew monstrous and glossy with poison, its leaves thick as leather, flowers the color of arterial blood. Night after night, when Marlene was at bridge club or drinking martinis with women half her age, Ruth practiced the stairs to the main house one at a time, gripping the rail Thomas had carved with his own hands when he was 16, building strength in legs that had carried her through 75 years of sorrow. Listening to the house breathe, the way a mother listens for a child's nightmare. And she waited. Letters from Clara came thin and infrequent, each one ending the same way: take care of yourself, Ruth. And Ruth wrote back on the thinnest onion skin so the prism sensors would not notice the tremor in her hand. Years turned. Ruth turned 90, 95, 98, her body shrinking but her mind sharpening like a blade left too long in whetstone. And still she waited, pouring pills into the geranium, practicing the stairs, remembering the exact sound Thomas's neck had made because she had heard it that night, old but not deaf, lying awake with a migraine while the house betrayed her son. On the soft April night of 2024, when the apple blossoms were beginning to rot on the branch and the air smelled of sweetness turning sour, Marlene, 70 now, fatter, careless with triumph, went down to the cellar with a flashlight between her teeth and a pry bar, lifted the third stair that had always squeaked, reached into the hollow beneath for the small plastic bag containing the one peach silk slipper still flecked with Thomas's dried blood, the single piece of evidence he had hidden 24 years earlier. Ruth stood at the top of the stairs in her white nightgown, silver hair loose like moonlight, and spoke for the first time in weeks with a voice soft and steady as the one she had once used to read fairy tales. "That's enough, Marlene." The flashlight clattered down the steps. Marlene froze. Ruth descended slowly, hand over hand on the rail her son had built, and when she reached the bottom, she picked up the fallen light and shone it into Marlene's face. "I knew the night it happened," Ruth said. "I heard you cry out once, just once, like someone surprised. Then the second, heavier fall. You pushed him, you waited till he turned, and you pushed him, and then you threw the hammer after. You thought I'd die quiet. You thought the pills would keep me quiet, but I stopped swallowing them last year, and the geranium has never looked healthier." She reached past Marlene and took the slipper from its hiding place, held it up so the dried blood caught the light. "This will interest the state police," she continued, "and so will the new will I signed last month with Mr. Hargroves Jr. Partner. Everything goes to Clara. When she comes home, you get nothing but the chance to confess before they come for you instead." Marlene lunged then, wild and cornered, teeth bared like an animal. But Ruth had spent 24 years being small and silent and forgotten, and she moved with the calm of someone who had nothing left to lose. She stepped aside exactly the way Thomas had once taught her to dodge a falling beam in the workshop, and Marlene's momentum carried her forward, her forehead striking the same blood-stained third step from the bottom with a crack that echoed the night Thomas died. Marlene fell limp, eyes open to the rafters, a thin line of blood trickling from her temple. Ruth sat down on the bottom step beside the body, breathing hard, Thomas's old cast-iron grilled cheese skillet across her knees. She had carried it down with her, still hanging faithfully on its hook. After all these years, looked at the spreading blood, felt no triumph, only a vast hollow peace, like the moment after a long illness when fever finally breaks. Then she climbed the stairs one last time, dialed the state police from the kitchen phone, laid the blood-stained slipper, the flourishing geranium heavy with 24 years of sedatives, the new wool, and a cassette tape she had recorded months earlier recounting every detail on the kitchen table, beneath the light that had once guided Thomas home from the workshop, and walked out to the porch to wait for sunrise. When the cruisers pulled up with lights painting the apple blossoms red and blue, Ruth stood straight in her nightgown, hair loose and wild, and told them everything: where to dig for the slipper, how to test the geranium leaves, whom to call at Muncie to begin the exoneration paperwork. And as the officers led her inside to take her statement, she looked back once at the house on Willow Lane, at the open windows she had insisted on for 65 years. And for the first time in all that time, the air moving through them smelled clean, as though the house itself, after carrying the weight of 3 generations of grief, betrayal, and murder, had finally, mercifully, exhaled.